There is a clear, odorless liquid that costs less than $2 at any pharmacy in the country. You probably have a bottle of it forgotten. It's in your bathroom cabinet right now. It was bought to disinfect a scratch, a small wound, maybe an inflamed gum, and then it just sat there, untouched, ignored, with nobody quite knowing what to do with it. But what nobody told you, and what companies with billions of dollars in revenue clearly prefer, you never find out is that this cheap, forgotten, practically invisible liquid sitting between generic medications is capable of eliminating mold from your home more completely, more deeply, and more definitively than any specialized product you have ever bought, used, and thrown away without lasting results. This is not a household cleaning trick. This is not an old wives' remedy. This is chemistry. This is cellular biology. This is a truth documented in hospitals, laboratories, and research centers that has been systematically kept out of popular knowledge because if it reached your hands with enough clarity and context, it would render obsolete. With a market valued at more than $22 billion per year, the specialized household cleaning products market, the same market that sells you the feeling of a solution, is in colorful packaging with powerful fragrances and promises of total elimination, while the mold comes back within weeks, punctual as a rent payment. You have been through this, everyone has. The bathroom, the corner of the ceiling, the wall behind the wardrobe, the grout line of the tile. That dark stain appears, sometimes greenish, sometimes black, with that texture that feels like powder and feels damp at the same time. You go to the store, buy the mold-specific spray, the one with that strong bleach smell that burns your eyes and throat, apply it to the surface, scrub it with a brush, and for 2, maybe 3 weeks, the problem disappears, it seems solved, it seems clean, but the mold did not go away, it was temporarily discolored. The living structure of the fungus, the mycelium that had infiltrated the pores of the grout, the plaster, the silicone, was still there, intact, waiting for the right conditions to reappear. And in a bathroom or a kitchen, the right conditions always come back, the moisture returns, and the mold returns with it. That is where the story nobody is telling you begins. The compound that changes everything is called hydrogen peroxide, H2O. In practice, it is a water molecule with one extra oxygen atom. That extra atom is the difference between inert water and one of the most effective oxidizing substances ever cataloged by science at the 3% concentration, which is exactly the concentration sold in pharmacies for antiseptic use. Hydrogen peroxide has a capability that commercial cleaning products rarely achieve. It does not simply reach the surface of the mold. It penetrates the cellular structure of the fungus and destroys it from the inside out. To understand what that means, you need to understand what mold actually is. Mold is not a stain, it is not dirt, it is a living organism. It is a multicellular fungus with structures called hyphae that branch like invisible roots into any porous surface they encounter. Plaster, aged silicone, wood, cardboard, fabric, what you see on the surface, that black or greenish stain, is only the reproductive part of the organism, the spores, the tip of the iceberg. Underneath, inside the wall, inside the grout, there is a living network of mycelium that keeps growing and that no colorful bleach-scented spray can ever reach, chlorine, which is the active ingredient in most commercial mold products. As a bleaching agent, it whitens the pigments of the spores. That is why the stain disappears, but the mycelium beneath remains. Chlorine has no penetrating capacity. In porous structures, it reacts at the surface and dissipates. The result, discolored mold, not eliminated, living fungus, not destroyed, and within a few weeks, the stain returns, often larger than before, because the moist conditions that favor growth were never effectively altered, and the organism simply resumed its reproductive cycle. From the mycelium that survived intact, hydrogen peroxide works in a completely different way when it comes into contact with biological tissue, and fungus is biological tissue. HO releases reactive oxygen immediately and aggressively. That oxygen destabilizes the proteins of the fungal cells that keep the organism alive. This is not cosmetic, it is not superficial, it is cellular destruction at the molecular level. The visible spores die, the invisible hyphae die, the mycelium infiltrated into the porous layers of the surface dies, and what remains after the chemical reaction completes is nothing but water and oxygen. Literally, HO breaks down into HHOO plus O, water and oxygen. No toxic volatile compound after you use a product with ammonia or chlorine, a haze that, according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, can cause respiratory irritation, worsening of asthma, and with prolonged exposure, damage to mucous membranes. Now, before we go further, I need to be honest with you about something. Hydrogen peroxide is not a universal magic solution on extremely porous surfaces such as severely degraded old plaster or unfinished wood. The infestation is to resolve completely. In those cases, the structural cause, leaks, insufficient ventilation, chronic moisture, needs to be addressed. Wet will create favorable conditions for any fungus. Regardless of the cleaning agent used, Hydrogen peroxide does not replace ventilation, and it does this with extraordinary effectiveness compared to most commercial products, is eliminate the active fungus and dramatically reduce the likelihood of... That difference in everyday practical terms is significant, but it needs to be understood with clarity, not with exaggeration. That said, what history shows is that this effectiveness is not a recent discovery, it is not a social media trend, it is not a niche theory. Hydrogen peroxide was identified as an effective antifungal agent as early as the 19th century, shortly after its synthesis by French chemist Louis-Jacques Thenard in 1818. Throughout the 20th century, using it to sterilize surfaces and surgical equipment, precisely because of its ability to eliminate fungal, bacterial, and viral organisms. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, catalogs hydrogen peroxide as one of the validated disinfecting agents for use in healthcare settings. The World Health Organization includes it in its hospital disinfection guidelines. NASA uses it for decontamination of space equipment. The American military used it for substance, which you have in your cabinet for $2, operates at the same level of antimicrobial effectiveness as products used in the most demanding conditions modern civilization has ever conceived. And then comes the question I cannot stop asking, and that you are probably starting to ask yourself as well. If hydrogen peroxide is validated by hospitals, by the CDC, by the WHO, by NASA, if it is available at any pharmacy for a fraction of the cost of any commercial mold product, if it leaves no toxic residue, does not irritate the respiratory tract, and eliminates fungus in a structurally more complete way than chlorine. For this specific application, why does nobody talk about it? Why have you never seen this product in the cleaning aisle with a bold label saying, eliminates mold for real? Why is what you find on the shelves sprays with powerful names, citrus fragrances, ergonomic packaging, and prices ranging from $15 to $40 for a 500 milliliter bottle, when a 250 milliliter bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide costs less than $2 and works better? The answer is not a conspiracy. It is economics. The specialized household cleaning industry in the United States moved approximately $22.4 billion in 23. These numbers do not exist because the products sell a definitive solution. They exist because the products sell a recurring solution. You buy it, the problem disappears for 3 weeks, the problem comes back, you buy. Again, the business model depends directly on the recurrence of the problem. A product that genuinely and durably resolved mold at a deep level would be bought once and crossed off the shopping list. That is not how billions of dollars are built. And this does not mean companies sat in a dark room and decided to. Consumer communication will inevitably go toward products that generate continuous financial return. Hydrogen peroxide at 3% does not generate continuous return. It has no patent. It has no significant profit margin. It cannot be differentiated by packaging or fragrance, so it stays where it is, in the first aid aisle, between the bandages and the antiseptics, with no usage instructions for treating household fungus, no campaign explaining what it actually does, no television ads showing mold disappearing for real. The result is that you spend, on average, between $80 and $200 per year on antifungal cleaning products that address the symptom without treating the cause, while a documented, validated, and biologically superior alternative to chlorine for this specific application sits in your pharmacy for less than $2, waiting for you to know what it actually is. And now, the application is simple to the point of seeming unbelievable. You take a spray bottle, it can be an empty wash spray bottle or a new one that costs less than $3, and pour the 3% hydrogen peroxide directly into it with no dilution, no mixing with any other product. You go to the surface with mold, you spray directly onto the affected area, covering the entire visible extent and the margin around it. And then you do the thing that will feel counterintuitive to anyone accustomed to scrubbing. Nothing. You let it work. Hydrogen peroxide needs contact time to penetrate the porous layers and initiate the oxidizing reaction inside the fungal structures. The ideal time is between 10 and 15 minutes. In some cases, you will see a faint effervescence, that characteristic bubbling hydrogen peroxide produces when it contacts organic matter. Is literally the process of cellular destruction happening in front of you. After 15 minutes, you can wipe with a damp cloth. No vigorous scrubbing is necessary. The fungal structure has already been chemically compromised. What you are removing is the biological residue of an organism that hydrogen peroxide has already destroyed for non-porous surfaces. Glazed tile, glass shower enclosures, chrome fixtures. A single application is typically enough to completely eliminate the visible and painted plaster. 2 or 3 applications spaced a few days apart produce progressively more complete results as the hydrogen peroxide. And there is a detail that elevates this solution to another level entirely, because hydrogen peroxide leaves no chemical residue, breaks down completely into water and oxygen. There is no false protective layer effect that some commercial products create on the surface, temporarily sealing the area but trapping moisture underneath and favoring fungal growth at the edges of the treated zone. This happens with products based on synthetic surfactants, components that create a film on the surface, and that, paradoxically, in damp, poorly ventilated environments can create microenvironmental conditions favorable to new fungal fungal colonies at the boundaries of the treated area. It is a clean surface with no residue, no film, no artificially created favorable condition. There is also a piece of data that few people discuss when it comes to household mold, and that makes this conversation more urgent than it might seem. According to the EPA, indoor environments can have pollutant concentrations 2 to 5 times higher than outdoor environments. A significant portion of that indoor pollution comes from volatile organic compounds released by household cleaning products, but another portion comes from fungal spores. In suspension, Aspergillus niger, the common black mold found in bathrooms, and Stachybotrys chartarum, the so-called toxic black mold that develops microscopic spores that remain airborne, and that, when repeatedly inhaled, are associated with respiratory symptoms. A mold infestation is not just an aesthetic problem. It is a domestic health problem that affects the quality of the air you and your family breathe every single day, and that problem is being consistently mishandled by products that cost 20 times more and do less. Which brings me back to the central point of this narrative, which is not only about hydrogen peroxide, it is about a pattern. It is about how useful, simple, and cheap knowledge tends to disappear in an entire economic chain working to ensure that you find it first, that you trust it first, that you buy it first, and that you buy it again when it does not truly solve the problem. There is a practical intelligence that existed before the era of specialized products, an intelligence that knew vinegar dissolves limescale because it is acidic, that baking soda neutralizes odors because it is alkaline, that hydrogen peroxide destroys fungi because it is an oxidizer. That intelligence was not
forgotten by accident. It was progressively buried under the mass communication of an industrial sector that needs you not to know it in order to keep growing. Every
time you buy a $30 product for a problem that $2 would solve better, you are not making an informed choice. You are making the choice someone invested a great deal of money to ensure you would make, reclaiming that intelligence is not regression, it is not primitivism, it is autonomy, it is the ability to look at a real domestic problem, understand what is happening biologically, choose the most adequate tool based on how it actually works, and stop being a passive.
To look at a real domestic problem, understand what is happening biologically, choose the most adequate tool based on how it actually works, and stop being a passive consumer of ineffective solutions endlessly repeated. The bottle of hydrogen peroxide in your cabinet right now, which costs less than a cup of coffee, which you bought for one purpose and forgot, holds inside it the answer to a problem you may have tried to solve dozens of times, only to watch it return. Not because you did not try hard enough, but because the tools you were sold were designed to perform, not to resolve. The difference, once you understand this, is not spending $2 at a time on something that does the real work, between living in a home where mold is an inevitable recurring problem and living in a home where it was treated with the chemical seriousness it deserved from the very beginning. You did not need a professional cleaning crew. You did not need an industrial grade product with restricted access. You did not need any expensive, complex solution. An industrial grade product with restricted access, you did not need any expensive, complex solution available only to those with specific resources. You needed information. You needed to know what that cheap, clear, odorless liquid actually is, what it actually does, and why nobody with a commercial interest in selling you something more expensive ever had any. Incentive to tell you, now you have that information, and it changes what you are able to do starting today. Mold is not inevitable. Recurring spending on ineffective products is not inevitable. The feeling that the problem never truly goes away is not inevitable. What was inevitable until now was not knowing this, and that kind of inevitability, the kind built on the absence of information, is exactly the kind that disappears the moment you stop accepting that the expensive products aisle at the supermarket represents the limit of what is available to you. $2, a spray bottle, 15 minutes, and a decision to treat the problem for what it actually is, with what actually works. That is all that was ever standing between you and a mold-free home.